Hello everyone and welcome back to Arctic Retro. And today I am continuing my Amiga 2000 project. It had to take a pause a couple of weeks, but now I'm ready to continue. And I actually have been waiting for some parts, and yeah, these are the parts that has arrived, and yeah, it's sockets and capacitors for the other board that I did not recap, and here's some other interesting items that I'm gonna get back to soon. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2, I recommend you watch those first. However, in the previous episode I left this board with a green screen, and I did some repair to the CPU socket that did not quite work, but I am hopeful that I can fix this. I actually got a new socket for the CPU. I'm gonna desolder this one and insert the new one. And for the other board that is actually working, I am gonna recap it, replace all the electrolyte capacitors. I'm gonna start with the recapping of this board, and I'm not gonna show the recapping itself. I actually got this kit from Amiga store, and yeah, it should be all the caps that I need. So I want to make sure this board is working, and then I'm gonna assemble the machine, heating up the desoldering station, and as usual I have a drawing where all the different capacitors are laid out with their correct values and polarity. The last capacitor is being soldered, and yeah, it was a lot of work, but everything went smooth, so nothing happened. Alrighty, all new caps, great, and let's test, did I break it? Alright, it still works, fantastic. So this board is working just fine now, this far at least, and now I'm ready to start rebuilding the machine with this board. By the way, this board, the revision 6, is the one that's in the best condition, and yeah, so this will probably go back to KOJRO, Kjell Ove, and I will keep the broken one, or the one that is not that good. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is to concentrate on this other board, the revision 4.4, and it doesn't work. If you saw the last episode, I tried to repair a part of the CPU socket, but it didn't work, so now I got a new socket, and I'm gonna replace this socket and this one. Alright, let's get started with desoldering, and there's a lot of pins to desolder, and I'm really happy that I have my desoldering station. So I have desoldered all the pins on the sockets, but as usual they are still stuck to the board, and that's normal. The desoldering doesn't remove all the solder, so I usually use a combination of going over several times and then maybe use my soldering iron to loosen each pin. And what you should never do is try to rip out the chip or socket, because then you can lift or damage the traces. So I just try to loosen every pin that is stuck to its hole. So now this socket seems to be fairly loose. All the pins are possible to wiggle around. Yeah, so I'm just gonna lift it gently, not use too much force. There's still some pins that are stuck, I think. This side is free, but yeah, just try to wiggle it a little bit, and yeah, I think I have to go another round. That's one, and the big one still remains. Oh no, disaster. Even though I try to be very careful, you can see there is one trace that got lifted from this pad here, and yeah, that needs to be repaired. So that's what can actually easily happen if you're not careful enough, which I obviously was not. So oops. Well, we can make a little bodge wire to repair that one. So the CPU socket is starting to get loose. It's all loose on this side, and yeah, I think it is actually completely loose. Yes. And this time no broken trace, but there's one pin left. Before I fix the broken trace, I'm gonna clean the area under the sockets really good. You see how dirty it is? Then I'm gonna spray with some Oxide Clean, and yeah, this is really strong and it's very good for removing oxidization from electronics. I bought this on Biltema in Norway. I'll leave this for yeah, 10 minutes. So the area under the sockets cleaned up really nice, and now I'm gonna do a little bit more cleaning. I'm just gonna add some flux and then go over each of the pads, remove the old solder tin. And for that I use this solder wick. The solder wick sucks up the leftover solder tin from the pads. Alright, that's it for this side of the board, and you can see how shiny all the pads are now compared to before. The back side is not that dirty, but I'm gonna use the same method. A little bit of deoxit and just spread it around the holes. Leave it there for a few minutes. That was the cleaning, and now I'm gonna repair the lifted trace, and it goes from this via here and over to this pin, but I'm gonna repair it on the back side. That way I don't have to solder on the same pad as the socket. On the back side it's from this point here, this via, and over to the pin over there, and I just mark them. And I will solder the other end when I solder in the socket. I'm ready to solder in the sockets, but before I do that, I'm actually gonna measure that all the different connections are okay. So yeah, just measuring between all the different pads and where the trace go. Alright, I checked every trace, at least most of them I think, and everything was okay, and yeah, now I'm gonna solder in the sockets. So these should be good sockets, hopefully. Time for a little solder job. Then this repair job, just gonna solder it to that pin over there. There, that's good. Okay, moment of truth. Will this board work? With two new sockets. Oops. Bent leg. All right, fingers crossed. Does it work now? Nope. Green screen still. Bummer. And the power LED is blinking 10 times short and 1 time long. Well, at least it has new sockets on the ROM and the CPU, but still the same error, and yeah, might be anything, and I have to do a little bit more hunting for the fault, but I'm gonna leave this board aside for now and start finishing off the other working machine. Alright, I took out the Agnus chip and cleaned the socket and the chip really good and inserted it again, and actually the board then booted into the kickstart, and but sometimes it's just a black, and sometimes it boots into kickstart, so yeah, like that. Now it's working, and then the next time it might not be working, and if I leave it on for a couple of minutes, it might start to fail. So there is some intermittent error here somewhere, and actually now you can see it just after a couple of minutes it turned purple. Back to the working board, and now I'm gonna start building up a machine with this board. But before I do that, I'm gonna install this battery module that uses yeah, a small coin battery to provide power for running the clock, and yeah, because the battery was of course removed, and this one has a small diode that prevents that the battery gets charged from the board. This little battery module fits exactly where the old battery was, so that's pretty neat. Alright, just a little bit of soldering. This should be fairly trivial. This is a 3-volt CR2032 battery. It's time to assemble the machine. So I'm just gonna do it quickly, and I'm not gonna film everything, but this should be straightforward. Just do the reverse of what I did when I disassembled it. So try to hit the clips correctly. Seems to be okay. Then I just push it down. And now I need to find the correct screws. Luckily I have a label. This is number 1, so these are the same screws. And these metal parts, I'm not really sure how they went. I think it's like this. So it's like this, and this one goes onto the top with it has these holes in the sides, but the screws are in, so I need to remove them. dang, I did a little mistake. The power supply must of course go into the bracket before I screw it into the machine. I think this one was missing some screws, but I got a couple of new screws. And of course the floppy drive must also go in, so I have attached it. I had to take off this bracket first, of course, to reach the screws. One of the machines had a hard drive controller card and a hard drive, and the other one did not have the controller, so I'm gonna insert it into this machine, which is the one that KOJRO is gonna keep. It will be exciting to see if it actually can boot from this old hard drive. I actually did clean the card before, so the card and the contacts are clean. Alright, let me see if this machine actually boots from the hard drive. Well, it starts spinning. Noisy as hell. And then it stopped. Nope, the hard drive doesn't seem to work, and also I noticed that the power LED is not working either. But I tested with the other one and this is working, so probably the LEDs have been burnt out. So I'm not gonna try and figure out what's wrong with the hard drive, if it's the hard drive or the controller, or even if the machine is faulty, that the contacts are not working properly, but we will need a hard drive solution for this machine, and that will be a more modern solution than these old discs. But that will be in the next episode, so please stay tuned. Anyway, that was it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed the content, and hope to see you next time. And as usual, a big thanks to my supporters at Patreon and everyone else that watches my content and comments and things like that. So thanks a lot, and bye bye.